The year 1453 marked a turning point in world history. On that fateful day, the mighty walls of Constantinople, which had stood proud for over 1,000 years, finally crumbled. The city that had been the jewel of medieval civilization, the bridge between East and West, fell to a rising power that would reshape the world as we knew it. Picture this: cannons thundering against ancient walls, ships being dragged across land to bypass harbor chains, and the last Byzantine emperor throwing off his purple robes to fight alongside his men in one final desperate stand. This wasn't just another conquest. This was the birth of one of history's most fascinating empires. But how did this empire, born from a small Turkish tribe, grow to become a superpower that would make even the mightiest European kingdoms tremble? How did the Ottomans, under the brilliant leadership of Suleiman the Magnificent, build a civilization that would stretch from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia? Between 1453 and 1566, the Ottoman Empire achieved something extraordinary. While Europeans were still emerging from the Middle Ages, the Ottomans were creating a sophisticated society that blended military might with artistic brilliance, strict discipline with cultural tolerance, and Islamic tradition with modern innovation. Think about this. At a time when most European monarchs couldn't read, the Ottoman sultans were writing poetry. While religious persecution raged in Europe, the Ottomans were building a multi-faith empire where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side. This wasn't just an empire, it was a revolution in how to rule a vast, diverse world. Are you ready to unlock the secrets of this remarkable civilization? Join me as we explore the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, a time when East met West, when art met power, and when history itself was rewritten. If you're passionate about uncovering the mysteries of great empires and want to journey through time to one of history's most fascinating periods, hit that like button, subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles, and let's embark on this incredible adventure together. Trust me, this is one story you won't want to miss. Let me tell you about a ruler so remarkable that both his enemies and allies called him the Magnificent. Suleiman ascended to the Ottoman throne in 1520, and over the next 46 years, he would transform a powerful empire into something truly extraordinary. Picture a young sultan, just 25 years old, inheriting an empire that already stretched across 3 continents. Most rulers would have been content with such vast holdings, but not Suleiman. Within his first year of rule, he captured Belgrade, a fortress city that his great-grandfather Mehmed II had tried and failed to conquer twice. This was just the beginning. But here's what makes Suleiman truly fascinating. While he was a brilliant military commander, he wasn't just about conquest. Did you know that the Ottomans nicknamed him Kanuni, meaning the lawgiver? While European monarchs were still ruling by whim, Suleiman was creating detailed legal codes that protected all his subjects, regardless of their faith or social status. Under his leadership, the Ottoman armies marched west into Hungary, capturing the mighty fortress of Budapest and even laying siege to Vienna. To the east, his forces pushed deep into Persia. Along the North African coast, his admirals claimed territories from Egypt to Algeria, effectively turning the Mediterranean into an Ottoman lake. Here's a little-known fact. While Suleiman was conquering new lands, he was also writing poetry under the pen name Muhibi, meaning the lover. This same man who commanded armies would spend his evenings composing verses about love, life, and faith. He wrote more than 3,000 poems throughout his lifetime. In his court, you would find not just military commanders and politicians, but also artists, scholars, architects, and poets from across the known world. He built magnificent libraries, funded scientific research, and established schools that would rival the greatest European universities of the time. Think about this. When most European peasants couldn't read, Ottoman citizens had access to public libraries. While Europe was torn apart by religious wars, Suleiman's empire was a haven where Christians, Jews, and Muslims could practice their faiths freely. This wasn't just expansion for expansion's sake. This was the creation of a sophisticated, cosmopolitan civilization. By the time of his death in 1566, Suleiman had transformed the Ottoman Empire into the most powerful state in the world. But his true legacy wasn't just in the territories he conquered. It was in the civilization he built, the laws he created, and the culture he fostered. This was truly a golden age, led by a man who proved that true greatness lies not just in conquest, but in the ability to build, create, and inspire. Behind every great empire lies a system that keeps it running, and the Ottomans created one of the most sophisticated administrative machines the world had ever seen. But let me tell you about their most fascinating innovation. Imagine an elite force of soldiers so dedicated that European rulers would later try to copy their system, but never quite succeed. These were the Janissaries, and their story begins with a controversial practice called the fearsome. Every few years, Ottoman officials would travel through their Christian territories in the Balkans, selecting the most promising young boys from local families. These children, usually between 8 and 12 years old, would be taken to Constantinople to serve the empire. Now, before you judge this practice too harshly, let me tell you what happened next. These boys received the finest education available in the medieval world. They learned multiple languages, studied mathematics, literature, and Islamic law, and underwent rigorous physical training. The most talented among them didn't just become soldiers. They became scholars, administrators, and even grand viziers, the equivalent of a modern-day prime minister. Here's something remarkable. Many families, despite the initial heartbreak, began to see the fearsome as an opportunity. Their sons might rise from humble village life to become some of the most powerful men in the world. In fact, many of the Ottoman Empire's most capable leaders came from this system, including Ibrahim Pasha, a fisherman's son who became Suleiman the Magnificent's grand vizier and closest friend. The Janissaries themselves were a sight to behold. They were the first regular army in Europe since the Roman legions, and they were also the first army to wear uniforms and receive regular salaries. They marched into battle to the sound of their signature military band, the Mater, playing music so impressive that it later inspired European military bands and even classical composers like Mozart. But the Ottoman administrative system went far beyond the military. The empire was divided into provinces governed by pashas, who operated under a strict merit-based system. Think of it as a medieval civil service. Positions weren't inherited, but earned through ability and loyalty. Each province had its own mini-government, complete with tax collectors, judges, and religious authorities, all working under a unified code of laws. Here's a fascinating detail. The Ottomans kept such detailed records that historians today can tell you the price of eggs in 16th century Baghdad, or the salary of a teacher in Damascus. Their bureaucrats tracked everything from military supplies to the number of trees in royal orchards. The system was so effective that when a messenger arrived at any government office with orders from the Sultan, they could expect the same level of efficiency whether they were in Cairo, Belgrade, or Baghdad. In an age when most European kingdoms were still struggling with basic governance, the Ottomans had created a truly modern state. This combination of military excellence and administrative efficiency created something unprecedented. An empire where merit mattered more than birth, where different cultures and religions could coexist, and where a shepherd's son could rise to become the second most powerful person in the empire. It wasn't perfect, but for its time it was revolutionary. Let me tell you about a man who started his life as a carpenter's son and ended up becoming one of history's greatest architects. His name was Mimar Sinan, and under Suleiman the Magnificent, he would transform the skyline of Istanbul in ways that still take our breath away today. Imagine being so talented that you're given the title Chief Architect of the Empire. That was Sinan, and here's the incredible part. He designed and built 362 structures during his 50-year career, working well into his 90s. Think about that. This man was still climbing scaffolding and directing construction when most people of his time didn't even live past 50. The crown jewel of his work was the Süleymaniye Mosque. And let me tell you, this wasn't just another beautiful building. When Suleiman commissioned it, he had one goal in mind: to create something that would rival or even surpass the legendary Hagia Sophia, the 600-year-old Byzantine masterpiece that had dominated Istanbul's skyline for centuries. Here's something fascinating. Sinan studied the Hagia Sophia for years, learning from its innovative design and even its flaws. He discovered that the original Byzantine architects had struggled with the massive dome's weight. So what did he do? He created an even larger space, but designed it so perfectly that his dome has stood firm for over 4 centuries, while the Hagia Sophias had to be repaired multiple times. The Süleymaniye wasn't just a mosque. It was an entire complex, a city within a city. It included a hospital, a medical school, public baths, a kitchen feeding the poor, and even a hostel for travelers. The acoustics were so perfectly designed that even today you can hear a whisper from one end of the massive prayer hall to the other. But here's my favorite detail. Sinan built 4 minarets with a total of 10 balconies, a subtle architectural code telling everyone who saw it that Suleiman was the 10th Ottoman Sultan. Every aspect of the building told a story of power, sophistication, and divine authority. The Ottomans didn't just build mosques, they created spaces that combined beauty with function, spirituality with social services, and architectural innovation with artistic excellence. Their buildings featured intricate calligraphy, stunning tile work, and mathematical precision in their geometric patterns that would make modern engineers envious. Speaking of those mesmerizing patterns, did you know that Ottoman architects used complex mathematics to create designs that could theoretically extend into infinity? These weren't just pretty decorations, they were sophisticated expressions of Islamic philosophy about the infinite nature of the divine. And here's a question for you. Which architectural wonder of the world leaves you most amazed? Is it the soaring domes of the Süleymaniye, the perfect proportions of the Taj Mahal, or perhaps the engineering marvel of the Great Pyramids? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by these architectural masterpieces and want to learn more about how they shaped history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles. We have many more incredible stories to share about the wonders of the past. While many imagine the Ottoman Empire as an unstoppable military force, some of its greatest victories were won not on the battlefield, but in the elegant halls of diplomacy. Let me tell you about a fascinating alliance that would shock many people today. The partnership between the Ottoman Sultan and the French king, a Muslim ruler and a Christian monarch working together in an age of religious conflict. Picture this. It's 1525 and Francis I, King of France, has just suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Pavia. He's been captured by his arch-rival, Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. In desperation, Francis's mother does something unprecedented. She writes a letter to Suleiman the Magnificent asking for help. And here's the incredible part. Suleiman responds. The Sultan not only sent a letter demanding Francis's release, but also began a diplomatic relationship that would last for centuries. This wasn't just any alliance. It was the first formal alliance between a Christian European power and the Islamic Ottoman Empire. The French called it the sacrilegious union, but it would change the face of European politics forever. Here's a fascinating detail. Suleiman and Francis exchanged elaborate gifts, including exotic animals, precious jewels, and even Christian relics. The Ottoman Sultan once sent an entire menagerie of exotic animals to the French court, including an elephant that paraded through the streets of Paris, amazing the local population who had never seen such a creature. But this wasn't just about fancy gifts and exotic animals. The Ottomans granted France special trading privileges in their territories, known as capitulations. French merchants could trade freely throughout the Ottoman Empire, establish their own courts for disputes, and even practice their religion openly. These privileges were so valuable that other European nations would spend the next centuries trying to get similar deals. The Ottoman diplomatic corps was incredibly sophisticated. They maintained detailed intelligence networks across Europe, kept careful records of European politics, and trained specialized interpreters who could navigate not just languages, but cultural differences as well. These interpreters, known as dragomans, often came from families who had served in this role for generations. Think about this. While most European powers were fighting religious wars and persecuting religious minorities, the Ottomans were sending Muslim ambassadors to Christian courts, negotiating treaties with Venice, trading with England, and maintaining diplomatic relations with powers as far away as Poland and Sweden. One of my favorite stories is about how Suleiman used these diplomatic channels to play European powers against each other. When Charles V boasted about being the most powerful Christian ruler, Suleiman would support his rivals. When Venice grew too strong in the Mediterranean, he would ally with France to check their power. It was like a giant chess game, and Suleiman was a grandmaster. This sophisticated approach to international relations showed that the Ottoman Empire was far more than just a military powerhouse. They were masters of soft power long before the term was invented, using trade, culture, and diplomacy to extend their influence far beyond their military reach. Let me take you inside the fascinating world of Ottoman education, where knowledge was considered so precious that students and teachers were paid to pursue it. Yes, you heard that right. In an age when most of Europe's population couldn't read, the Ottoman Empire was paying people to learn. The madrasas were far more than simple religious schools. Imagine walking into one of these magnificent institutions, often built alongside grand mosques. You'd find students debating philosophy in one corner, studying advanced mathematics in another, while others pored over medical texts or discussed intricate points of law. These weren't dusty, rigid institutions. They were vibrant centers of learning where the ancient wisdom of the East met the emerging sciences of the West. Here's something remarkable. When students entered a madrasa, they received free accommodation, meals, and even a small stipend. The Ottomans believed that no one should be denied education because of poverty. Teachers were highly respected and well-paid professionals, often earning more than government officials. Some of the most prestigious madrasas, like the Süleymaniye in Istanbul, were as renowned as modern-day Oxford or Harvard. The curriculum was fascinating in its breadth. Students started with language and grammar, then moved on to logic, rhetoric, and mathematics. They studied astronomy using sophisticated instruments, learned medicine by working in hospitals, and delved into philosophy by reading both Islamic scholars and ancient Greek texts preserved in Arabic translations. Let me tell you about a typical day in a madrasa. Students would wake before dawn for morning prayers, followed by early classes in Quranic studies. As the day progressed, they would attend lectures on various subjects, engage in debates, and spend hours in the library. Many madrasas had vast libraries. The Süleymaniye Library, for example, held thousands of precious manuscripts from across the known world. Here's a little-known fact. These institutions weren't just for Muslims. Christian and Jewish students also attended madrasas, particularly to study medicine and science. The Ottomans preserved and built upon the knowledge of ancient civilizations. Greek, Persian, Indian, and Arabic texts were all studied and debated in these halls of learning. The madrasa system was organized in a hierarchical network, with students progressing through different levels. The highest-ranking madrasas in Istanbul were considered the equivalent of modern universities, and their graduates often went on to become judges, administrators, diplomats, or teachers themselves. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect was how these schools combined theoretical knowledge with practical application. Future judges wouldn't just study law books, they would apprentice in courts. Medical students worked in hospitals alongside experienced physicians. This practical approach produced graduates who were not just scholars, but skilled professionals ready to serve the empire. The Ottoman commitment to education was so strong that even small towns had madrasas. By the time of Suleiman the Magnificent, there were hundreds of these institutions across the empire, creating a network of knowledge that stretched from the Balkans to Arabia. This educational system helped create a sophisticated, literate society that preserved and advanced human knowledge during Europe's darker ages. The Ottoman control of the Silk Road was perhaps one of history's greatest commercial success stories. But to truly understand its significance, let me paint you a picture of what Istanbul looked like during this golden age. Imagine walking through the bustling streets of Istanbul in the 16th century. The air is filled with the aroma of exotic spices, cinnamon and cardamom from India, pepper from Southeast Asia, and delicate saffron from Persia. The grand bazaars are teeming with merchants speaking dozens of languages, their stalls overflowing with Chinese silk, African ivory, European wool, and Arabian coffee. What made Istanbul so special wasn't just its location bridging Europe and Asia. The Ottomans turned their capital into a masterfully organized trade hub. They built massive warehouses, caravanserais that served as hotels for traveling merchants, and sophisticated customs systems that ensured safe passage of goods. Here's something fascinating. The Ottomans didn't just control the land routes, they dominated the maritime Silk Roads too. Their navy protected merchant ships from pirates in the Mediterranean, Red Sea, and Indian Ocean. This meant that traders could choose either land or sea routes, making Istanbul the ultimate crossroads of world trade. But the Silk Road under Ottoman control wasn't just about goods. It was a superhighway of ideas and innovation. Persian astronomers shared their knowledge with European scholars, Chinese porcelain techniques influenced Ottoman pottery, and Indian mathematical concepts spread westward. Istanbul's coffee houses became centers of intellectual exchange, where merchants didn't just trade goods, but also stories, scientific knowledge, and philosophical ideas. The Ottomans were brilliant at maintaining this trading network. They kept taxes reasonable, provided armed escorts for caravans, and built an extensive network of roads and bridges. They even established a sophisticated banking system that allowed merchants to transfer funds between different cities without carrying large amounts of gold. But perhaps most remarkably, the Ottomans created what we might call an early version of international trade agreements. They established treaties with various powers, from Venice to India, ensuring that merchants from all corners of the world could trade freely and safely within their territories. This mastery of global trade routes helped make the Ottoman Empire extraordinarily wealthy and powerful. The customs duties alone from the Silk Road trade filled the imperial treasury with enormous wealth, funding the empire's magnificent architectural projects and powerful military campaigns. Through their control of the Silk Road, the Ottomans didn't just build an empire. They created one of the world's first truly global economies, connecting East and West in ways that would shape human civilization for centuries to come. As our journey through the magnificent Ottoman Empire comes to an end, let's take a moment to reflect on this remarkable civilization that changed the course of history. Under Suleiman the Magnificent's leadership, the Ottomans didn't just build an empire. They created a legacy that continues to influence our world today. Think about it. Every time you enjoy a cup of coffee in a cafe, you're experiencing a small piece of Ottoman cultural heritage. The very first coffee houses in Europe were inspired by Ottoman gathering places. When you admire the great domes of modern architecture, you're seeing the echo of Ottoman engineering genius. Even our modern understanding of religious tolerance and multicultural society owes much to the Ottoman system of governance. From the soaring minarets of Istanbul to the administrative systems that managed an empire spanning 3 continents, from the revolutionary military tactics to the sophisticated diplomatic relations that balanced European powers, the Ottoman Empire wasn't just about conquest. It was about creating a civilization that brought together the best of East and West. The questions we explored today still resonate. How does a society balance military might with cultural advancement? How can different cultures and religions coexist peacefully? How do trade and cultural exchange shape our world? The Ottoman Empire's solutions to these challenges still offer valuable lessons for our modern world. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What aspects of the Ottoman Empire fascinate you the most? Perhaps it's their remarkable architectural achievements, their military innovations, or maybe their sophisticated diplomatic relations. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to start a conversation about this fascinating period of history. And if you've enjoyed this journey through one of history's most powerful empires, don't forget to support our channel. Hit that like button, share this video with your history-loving friends, and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles. By subscribing, you'll join our community of history enthusiasts and never miss our upcoming episodes about ancient civilizations, medieval kingdoms, and the great empires that shaped our world. Remember, understanding history isn't just about learning facts. It's about understanding who we are and how we got here. Until our next historical adventure, I'm your host, and this has been Modern Age Chronicles. See you in our next journey through time.